Chapter 7.2 Christian Science. Born in 1821, Mary Baker Eddy is one of the few women who give birth to a religion. A native of New Hampshire, she was raised by strictly Calvinist parents and rebelled against their beliefs. Often ill, she read the Bible constantly in a search for cures. In 1843, she married George Glover, a young building contractor, and moved to North Carolina. He died just 3 months later, leaving her with a young son who she gave up to her former nurse 2 years later. After moving back to New Hampshire, she would not see young George again for more than 30 years. A second marriage ended in her husband deserting her, and then divorce. The persistent illnesses that nagged her, combined with the various personal concerns, caused Eddy to seek non-traditional solutions for her mental and physical health problems. With medicine in its infancy and considered dangerous, she turned to diet and water cures along with homeopathy. She even took placebos and decided that mental health played an important part in curing illnesses. Eventually, she met Phineas Quimby, then a popular healer working in Portland, Maine. He relied on suggestions and therapeutic touch along with hypnosis, claiming that suggestions were all that was needed for healing. He argued that illness is the result of a patient's mistaken beliefs. He called his system Christian Science. Eddy went to him for help and then began to study with him. Eventually, she broke away, saying that his training in hypnosis and his personality were leading to cures, not because of divine interference. Her relapse after his treatments probably helped discourage her. Her life changed in 1866. Walking in Swampscott, Massachusetts, Eddy fell on ice and damaged her spine. She wrote about the incident. On the third day thereafter, I called for my Bible and opened it at Matthew 9:2. And, behold, they brought to him a man sick of the palsy, lying on a bed. And Jesus, seeing their faith, said unto the sick of the palsy, Son, be of good cheer, thy sins be forgiven thee. As I read, the healing truth dawned upon my senses, and the result was that I arose, dressed myself, and ever after was in better health than I had before enjoyed. That short experience included a glimpse of the great fact that I have since tried to make plain to others, namely, life in and of spirit, this life being the sole reality of existence. Inspired, she began to read and study for more than 6 years. Along the way, she rejected conventional medicine, basing her thinking on the observation that Jesus did not rely on medicine to cure people. She wrote, It is plain that God does not employ drugs or hygiene, nor provide them for human use. Else Jesus would have recommended and employed them in his healing. The tender word and Christian encouragement of an invalid, pitiful patience with his fears and the removal of them are better than hecatombs of gushing theories, stereotyped borrowed speeches, and the doling of arguments, which are but so many parodies on legitimate Christian science. Aflame with divine love. In 1875, she published Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, which clarified her thoughts and attracted students. Eddy also flirted with spiritualism and worked as a medium, conjuring up spirits before rejecting that then popular concept. Amid her other activities, she married for the 3rd time, but her husband, Asa Eddy, died after just 5 years of marriage. By then, she had become well known for her teachings. In 1879, she and several students founded the Church of Christ Scientist. It was renamed the First Church of Christ Scientist a few years later. She founded reading rooms, and several years before her death in 1910, the Christian Science Monitor newspaper. Eddy was plagued by claims of plagiarism, which she never responded to in her writing. However, Professor Todd J. Leonard, who studied the situation, concluded, Many critics of Eddy maintained that she basically stole all of her ideas from her longtime teacher, Phineas P. Quimby. It was he who had worked to develop the healing system that she adopted to be used as the base doctrine in Christian Science. If she did not take all of his ideas, she, at the very least, based her system of healing on his basic treatises about mental healing. Her teachings, regardless of their source, remain controversial. Members of the church have lost lawsuits for refusing medical treatment, especially when young children were involved. Membership peaked around 250,000 in the 1930s and is estimated to be about 50,000 today in the United States and another 100,000 in Africa. After serious financial cutbacks in the first part of the 21st century, church leaders now say the religion's finances are stable. Ghost dancing. A small religious movement born in the 1800s among Native Americans, ghost dancing was the result of a vision that built on an earlier form of religious expression called round dancing. Wilson, born Coetzee in the 1850s, was the son of Tavibo, a Paiute shaman and local leader. He also had worked with Wodziwab, another shaman whose visions animated a round dance movement in the 1870s. The dances represented the sun's path across the sky. Wodziwab gained attention by saying, "Within a few moons there was to be a great upheaval or earthquake, during which the improvements of the whites, all their houses, their goods, stores, etc., would remain, but the whites would be swallowed up, while the Indians would be saved and permitted to enjoy the earth and all the fullness thereof, including anything left by the wicked whites." When his claims of an earthquake were met with skepticism, he added the prediction: "Those who believed in the prophecy would be resurrected and be happy, but those who did not believe in it would stay in the ground and be damned forever with the whites." The prophecies reflect the growing influence of Christianity and the desperation of Native Americans, who not only saw their land overtaken by settlers, but suffered from calamitous diseases, such as tuberculosis, brought by the newcomers. Nothing Wodziwab predicted came true, but his claims lingered until Wilson arrived. From age 8, the young Paiute lived and worked on a farm owned by David and Abigail Wilson. Following in his shaman father's footsteps, Wilson trained as a weather doctor and became locally known as a healer. As an adult, his name was Wovoka Cutter. He spoke about universal love, and then claimed his own vision in 1889. In a letter, Wilson wrote, "He stood before God in heaven, and had seen many of his ancestors engaged in their favorite pastimes, and that God showed Wilson a beautiful land filled with wild game, and instructed him to return home to tell his people that they must love each other, and not fight." In addition, Jesus was being reincarnated on earth in 1892, that the people must work, not steal or lie, and that they must not engage in the old practices of war or the traditional self-mutilation practices connected with mourning the dead. He said that if his people abided by these rules, they would be united with their friends and family in the other world and in God's presence. There would be no sickness, disease, or old age. Wilson, who had supervised round dances, said God also gave him the ghost dance, which involved a 5-day ritual, which, if done properly, would bring happiness to participants and hasten the reunion of the living and deceased. Performing the dance, in which participants shuffle in a circle to the beat of a lone drum, would speed the day when the land was retaken by the natives with plenty of buffalo and other prey, he said. Wilson got something from God, too: power over the western United States. Then President Benjamin Harrison was the ruler of the East, Wilson reported. To natives, the 5-day exercise was called Dance in a Circle. The Lakota tribe, the first natives that Europeans met, identified it as the spirit dance. Whites translated that as ghost dance, the term that it is known by today. To natives, the dance was a way to preserve their lifestyle and counter the intruding settlers. It quickly became part of the culture. To the whites, it seemed to represent a threat, particularly because tribal leaders wore special shirts which, at least one chief proclaimed, would repel bullets. The Indians may have gotten the idea from the Mormon temple garment that reportedly saved the wearer from sin. They were definitely useless against bullets. U.S. Army soldiers killed or wounded 300 people at Wounded Knee, South Dakota. The massacre drove Ghost dancing underground, but Wilson retained his aura as a spiritual leader and healer. He died in 1932. The religion he engendered still lingers among Native Americans.